Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with a video that I have been putting off for a long time because it's my all-time favorite romances, and even making this list, I feel like I forgot every book I've ever read, and I didn't know what to do. I had like a top 5 pretty much nailed down, and then I'm like, what else do I love? What else is so good that I can say it's an all-time favorite book? I do have 4 honorable mentions that I'll go through, and then I'll go through my top 10, but I do want to announce that I officially have merch, and I'm so excited to have finally launched this. I've been working on it for about a month now, and I am really excited about my designs. There are 5 up in my shop, and I hope you guys enjoy. I'll go ahead and link the shop down below. I did go through Bonfire because I've bought a couple things from them before, and I really love the quality, and so I hope you guys love the quality too. I'm really excited for them to start shipping out, to get my own, so if you're at all interested, I have a bunch of different designs. I will link it down below if you want to check it out, but I have 4 runners up, like I said, so I'll go ahead and talk about them. And now you may be wondering why certain books aren't on this list that were on this list like 3 or 4 years ago, because I've had my YouTube channel since 2015, so I've, like, if you've been around, you know my tastes have pretty much stayed the same but also changed over time, and there are some authors that I used to be like obsessed with that I've just kind of grown out of, and I don't really love them anymore. I'm also someone who never rereads books, so it could have been a favorite like 6 years ago, and now I don't know if I'd love it anymore, but I don't reread books, so I feel like some of my favorites so long ago I should reread just to see if I love them, but a good chunk of these are from the past couple years, so I will go ahead and get to my books. Now, my honorable mentions are ones, the first one, at least, is one that I really love, but I never talk about because this author's so hyped already, and that is Cultie by Mariana Zapata. I think this one's my favorite Mariana Zapata book. I love the tropes in here of how, like, she had a crush on him when she was younger because he was a hotshot soccer player, and he's her coach now, so it's forbidden, and she's a soccer player too, and it's slow burn. This one's one of my favorites by Mariana Zapata, though I do love From Luke with Love so much. It was hard only choosing one of hers for the honorable mention, but I just love female athletes in romances because I've always been athletic, so I love reading when the heroine also is with the male, and it's not just the male who's an athlete, so one of my favorites. I've also noticed that of the books that have made me cry, I don't cry at all in books. A lot of them are on this list because the emotions I felt reading these books just tore me apart, and so one of those is Making Faces by Amy Harmon. I don't talk about this one a lot either because I read it a few years, I think I read it in 2019, and I really loved it, but it was just so heart-wrenching that I just never talk about it. But this one has a scarred hero. She's kind of like on the outskirts of town. People like think she's weird, but she is just such a bright light and brings that out in him after he's so damaged because he lost all of his friends after going to war with all of them. He's the only one who survived, and it's very emotional, and you have to be in the right headspace to read this. I definitely cried in this one, and it was just beautiful. Another favorite of mine that I actually do talk about all the time is Always Only You by Chloe Leese. This is the second book in the Bergman Brothers series. I'm obsessed with the series, but this one is my favorite so far, though I really loved book 3 as a marriage in trouble romance. This one, our heroine is on the autism spectrum, and she also has arthritis, so she walks with a cane. He is a hockey player. I love sports romances so much, and it's forbidden because she works for the team, and he's not allowed to like make a move or anything, but there's like a caretaking scene in here when she gets sick, and he takes care of her, and he's just like so smitten with her, and I love this book so much. So I really love it, but it didn't make my top 10, which is sad, but it's really good. The last one, you'll be surprised, isn't in my top 10 because I used to like be hardcore obsessed with this and talk about it all the time, and I still really love this book and this series, but I think my love for it stems from my love for the TV show more so than the book, and that is Outlander. So I always would consider this one of my favorite books of all time, but I think that I haven't read it in so long that I am just obsessed with this whole world because of the show, and I don't know if I can necessarily say the book is one of my all-time favorites anymore, but I don't know because I have to reread this, and I wanted to read the rest of the series first because these are giant and the series is so long, and I've only read the first 2 books, 2.5 technically, but I'd love to continue on the series. This book still is one of my favorites, but I don't know if I can say it's an all-time favorite because I I think I'm just obsessed with the characters in the show and how the actors have brought them to life, more so than the book itself. This is a time-traveling Highlander romance. I don't think I need to explain it, but it's amazing. Okay, so on this list I have 10, and none of them are historicals because that's like a separate thing. I feel like I differentiate between like my favorites of all time and then my historical romances of all time. So I did make a video of that, I feel like recently, at least within the past year, which I can link down below if you're interested in seeing my favorite historical romances of all time, because I feel like they're just like two separate things and I can't mix them. But I don't know what I want to start with. I feel like I should start with the obvious. One of my all-time favorite books that a lot of people say is not a romance, but it's a romance to me. That's just what I'm gonna say. And it's Colleen Hoover. It Is It Ends With Us. This book was just an experience for me, and so touching and so heart-wrenching and so heartwarming with her romance, and there's just so many layers to this romance, and it's unlike anything I've ever read before. I cried reading this book, and that's really all I can say. It's about Lily, who my dog is named after too, and I just can't say anything bad about this book. And I know people say it's more women's fiction than romance, but I personally consider it a romance. I think it is by far worth the hype that it gets. I know not everybody loves it, but it's just something that's just so heartbreaking, and especially how Colleen Hoover writes about her inspiration for the book. When I was reading that, I was also crying. So this book is just so special to me, and I can't really tell you the synopsis because I think the best way to read this book is to go in not knowing anything. So it's just about a woman, and she works in a flower shop, and she meets someone, and there's an amazing romance in here. Another favorite is one that I've not finished the series for because it's just so emotional to read. Like, I love emotional books, but I'm scared of emotions. I am terrified of emotions, so that's why I don't read emotional books that much. But when I do, they're like my all-time favorites. And so this one is Wolf Song by TJ Klune. I read this at the end of 2019, I think, and it just like blew me away. It is an werewolf romance, and it's like pretty much like fated mates, but not. So they've like been super special to each other since they meet when they're really young, before anything like physical attraction wise happens. And then they are adults and in their 20s when, I'm pretty sure they're both in their 20s, if not one's like 19 or something, when they realize that they are physically attracted and just have been in love with each other their whole lives. And it's just amazing and heart-wrenching. I don't think I cried in this one though, but it was just like emotionally draining reading this book. Oh my goodness. And it's very long, and it is very slow. TJ Klune makes you just absolutely fall in love with these characters and this family, especially. Ox just like stole my heart. He was such a special character that I've never read anything like him before, and I just wanted to like give him a hug and never let him go. He's one of my favorite characters I've ever read, and how he found a home with their family just makes me want to cry thinking about it because it's just so amazing and one of my favorites. But I've only read book 2, which I read last year. Like, I can only handle a book a year because they just like are so emotionally draining. Oh my god. And I'm scared for book 3, and then I have book 4 still left. So maybe I'll read both of them like in the fall if I'm feeling ambitious, but one of my favorites. I'm just going through this stack. I'm not even going in a certain order, but it should be no surprise that this author's on this list, but it might be a surprise which book is, because the second book in the series has been my favorite since I read it in 2019. This book knocked it down, and that is Inked in Lives by Jana Darling. I absolutely adore the series, and Welcome to the Dark Side blew me away when I read it back in 2019. I really enjoyed Lessons in Corruption, but nothing can beat Lou and Zeus. Except for this book, because this one, they've been meant to be since they were young. So our heroine is really like a toddler when this starts, and our hero is like 18, I think, and he's best friends with her brother, and they move in next door to her. She has a really bad home life, and so something happens and she ends up moving in with our hero's family, but our hero is 18, he graduates high school and he leaves. So they were only like living together for like 6 months, but she'd always just been like toddler in love with him kind of thing. Definitely a lot of emotional scenes in here because I cried twice before the first 100 pages were over, but then we flash to when she's like in her early 20s and she wants to be with him and he keeps on pushing her away, and then we get her when she's like 25, 26, so he's in his 30s, and it's a motorcycle romance, and it's just amazing. I love that kind of romance. I love when it takes so long for them to get together. I love angst. If you didn't know that, I'm obsessed with angst. I need there to be emotions and hurt and just we can't be together but we really want to. So I love this one so much that it beat out it beat out book 2. Okay, I'm talking too much, but the next one is a duet. And I talk about it all the time, and I know you guys are probably really annoyed with me for talking about this so much, but I have to include Kennedy Ryan on here. The Kingmaker duet, I love this. And again, this is super angsty, and it takes a long time for a couple to find their happily ever after, like literal years, but I love that pining. I love that angst. And so our hero and our heroine meet when our heroine is protesting a pipeline. She is part Native American, and it's going on native land, and the hero's dad is the one in charge of the pipeline, and so he's like visiting with his dad, and he doesn't agree with what his dad does, but then he sees her, something happens, and he tries to like save her, and they both wind up in jail, but she is underage, and so he's like, well, this girl's intriguing, but like obviously like too young. And so then we get a little fast forward when she's in college and they're reunited, and just so much happens in here. I actually like really love romantic suspense, and I don't know why I don't read more of it, because I love that genre. I love it when there's like action and like you don't know if they're gonna live or not, and there's a lot in here that's romantic suspense. Our hero goes to Antarctica for something, almost dies. Something happens at the end of book 1 that you're like, excuse me, suspense wise, and they're just like amazing. So read them. The next one is probably one you're not surprised to see on here, because I literally talk about it all the time, and I read it for the first time this year, and that is Forget Me Not by QB Tyler. I don't know what it is about this book. I think it was just something that I really needed at the time. I listened to the audiobook. It's a marriage and trouble romance, which is easily one of my favorite tropes to read about now, which I need to read more of, and it's an amnesia romance, which is again one of my new favorite tropes to read. I usually read it in historical romances. I literally just finished an audiobook that was a historical romance, Amnesia, and loved it. So I just love that trope. But they're on the brink of divorce. Like they're literally like a month out from finalizing their divorce. He gets in a car accident, has amnesia, and forgets the last 5 years. He thinks that they are still madly in love with each other, so he's very confused why she's acting weird when he wakes up, and she's like, are you kidding me? You cheated on me. So this does do with cheating. Know that going in. Don't read this and rate it low because you don't like cheating. It has cheating in it, so please know that going in. But I loved it. I loved it so much. I loved the angst between them, and how they talk about the cheating, and how they have to come to terms with what they did to each other and take responsibility for it and fall in love again. It's amazing. I love it. Another favorite of mine that I think I'll just always love is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. This and It Ends With Us are the only 2 traditionally published books on this list, but I think Talia Hibbert's Brown Sister series is so worth the hype. But this one is definitely my favorite because it's fake dating friends to lovers, and I just loved how soft Zaf was as a character. He is trying to, I believe it was his foundation that he created so that boy athletes aren't scared to like show emotion, and like they get rid of toxic masculinity basically, and I love that about him. And I loved how he took so much care of Dani. Like he would always have a granola bar ready for her, like a breakfast bar, because he knew she forgot to eat, and it was just when they were friends because he was a security guard in her building, and it was just so cute. Like just how this is like not angsty at all, just like the softness and adorableness of this romance I was obsessed with, and I will always remember it. And I need to reread the series honestly, and I need to reread this book, but it's amazing. Another all-time favorite of mine is by Karina Halley. I love her books, and that's going to be One Hot Italian Summer. This is about a writer, and she loses her writing partner in the beginning of the book, and she doesn't know if she can be a writer by herself, and so her agent sends her off to Italy to a little villa, and she meets a guy there. He's a single dad. He's an artist. I just like loved everything about this book. As a contemporary romance, it was amazing. It was also emotional. I mean, she lost someone in the beginning, and he's off limits, which I love a good forbidden romance as well. So this wasn't like as angsty as the other books on this list. It just had everything I love in a contemporary romance, so I just adored this book. This next one was really hard because I have loved another book by this author for so long, but I think if I reread it, I wouldn't love it as much as this other book, because I haven't reread that book in like years, and this one I think looking back I love more than that one, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I think this one has knocked Punked 57 off of my favorites, and this one is about Jordan and Pike, and it is a boyfriend's dad romance, but it is like not that taboo as it sounds, because Pike's really young. He's in his 30s and has an 19-year-old son, and so it's not like he's like 50 and she's like 18. It's not as big of an age gap, and he and her like honestly connect and get along so well. Like, they meet before they even know who each other are, and her boyfriend's like really a deadbeat boyfriend and he's annoying, and so I just adored this romance and how taboo it was, even though, like, considering what other boyfriend's dad romances are out there, like, this isn't that bad. But I just think Penelope Douglas is an amazing writer and I will forever love her, and I love this book. The last one I almost forgot, but I was looking through my Goodreads and I was like, how did I almost forget this one? This is the last one, and it is The Gravity of Us by Brittany C. Cherry. One I cried in, one that's super angsty, and one that I was obsessed with. And so this one is definitely forbidden. They're not supposed to like each other, and our heroine owns a flower shop, and the way they meet, and he is just so cold and it's like really grump sunshine and so emotional, and that's really all I can say. I really want you to go into this one not knowing a lot, so I'm not going to say too much more about it, but just like I said, the emotions and just the fact that he's trying so hard not to let anybody else in, and he is trying so hard to be good at what he's trying to do, even though he's like totally lost, and I just loved it so much. So love this one, definitely recommend it, and I have to read more of the series. I've only read the first one. I didn't really love the first one, so I jumped straight to book 4 because it's everyone's favorites, but I've heard books 2 and 3 are good as well. And those are my favorite romances of all time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. If any of my answers surprised you, if I forgot any, let me know, and what your favorite romances of all time are. I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.